And I am pleased to be joined by Fox's lead USFL and college football analyst, Joel Klatt. Joel, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm very excited to talk with you about this season in the USFL, the inaugural season of the USFL, for which you have been a part of at
Yeah.
least one broadcast every single weekend
Yeah.
without fail, and sometimes calling back-to-back games.
Yeah. Sometimes too.
Right. And I'm curious to start with, what have you learned about the
Yeah.
USFL that you think fans should know?
Oh man, that's a great question. You know, I I get jaded sometimes in college football and then watching the NFL because it can feel at times all about, like the TV deal is this much money and the coach gets paid this much money and this contract and that contract. And I feel like, and unfortunately in the college landscape, certainly it's become, a bit too much of a business. And I have learned that there are so many guys out there that are willing to go, and yes, they're being paid, and yes, it's professional football, but their love of the sport has really just like shown through. And that's, I think, to me, I don't know if I've learned it, but it's what I've loved about it so far is how hard the guys play, and they're down there, and it's not easy. And I have a unique perspective, RJ, because of my background playing minor league baseball. So I remember what it was like to sit in a hotel, and your life is just about your sport. and that's kind of what they're doing now. I didn't do it in a bubble with all the other teams, which would be fascinating. But you really got to love the sport to excel at this level and to excel in this league. And that's certainly what I've loved about it. But it's also just kind of brought it to the forefront, and that's probably what I've learned. And then I've also learned, and this is my history with spring football. We did a little of the XFL as well. Spring football is it not only works, but I think it's really good, and for the purpose that it serves. And that's certainly something that I've learned this year.
I want to echo all of that and really double down on just how excited and thrilled and appreciative players are for the opportunity to play in this league, right? That's
Totally.
one of my favorite aspects of this is just learning what it takes to get here. And then I say this all the time, and I think you'll agree with me. There are great football players everywhere. Like, I'm amazed at some of the talent that is in this league. I'm going, wait a second, you went to where and you did what?
And I always say, RJ, there's probably, outside of like the top 10% of players in the National Football League, you could replace 90% of the NFL out there. And maybe that's an exaggeration, but there are a ton of really good football players that are just on the streets and need an opportunity. Not on the streets, like literally, but you know what I mean? Like from a football sense, like don't have an opportunity after college and are trying to find a place to play. And this provides that. And they certainly have shown out. There's a lot of players that I look at and I'm like, man, you're really good.
And on top of being really good, really resilient, one of the challenges I thought of being a player in this league was there is no bye week, right? There's no real off time. You're playing every single weekend. And I wonder what you think of the overall scheduling format, sometimes playing 4 games in 2 days or 4 games in 3 days.
So I think that's needed. Like you have to do it that way in order for it to work, because it does have to work out financially, for the backer. And so there can't be too much downtime in that regards, because that just costs too much money. The resilience also, I think, comes in, RJ, in terms of roster size and the amount of time that not only they have to go without buys, but also a lot of them have to be on every single special. And, it's not easy to have a limited roster and compete this many weeks in a row. So a lot of these guys are playing banged up. And I think that's obviously, speaks to your point about resilience, and also love of the sport. There's no doubt about that. The schedule, I think, has worked. I think that the only thing that I'm excited for moving forward is to present this to more people. And I'm not talking about a television standpoint, I've been there for the Birmingham games, and I can feel like the good energy for the Birmingham games with the crowd. And so I'm looking forward to, next season and seasons after, where each of these teams has an opportunity to go play potentially in front of a home crowd, or we have 2 different locations, or whatever the model is. I think expanding it from an in-person fan standpoint is going to be important and much needed. And that would be the only thing that I would say from, I guess, a scheduling standpoint, is I know why we had to do it this way this year, but I'm looking forward to taking it to more people and getting more fans in the stands for each of these games.
I couldn't agree more in that the way that Birmingham has embraced the Stallions and has the largest turnout for each one of their games. It also invites me to remember home field advantage does actually mean something somewhere in a market like Birmingham's, where you have a huge college football following to begin with, right? With Tuscaloosa being right down the road and the UAB Blazers playing right at Protective Stadium, where most of the games are played. I've just been enthusiastic about being able to tell people, hey, United States Football League plays in your city or is within driving distance. Maybe you want to go check it out. They'd be like, I had no idea. Yeah. And then they get to hear a Joel Klatt on the call and really do one of my favorite things, Joel. It really is. You will hear the play call, and then you will tell me what is about to happen. I love it so much. So I want to know, from the television standpoint, how do you feel to be able to hear the play call and the back and forth?
I love it. I love hearing it. There's so much depth to this topic. There's so much you can go into of what I love about it. Obviously, it's we get to know what the play is, but I love hearing all the different language. I'm not talking about foul language either, although we do hear that. I know we kind of don't beep it out for you at home, but I'm talking about just the language of football. You've got, deuce right, 52 Y stick, Z, Z search. And then someone else is just like, brown butter pirate, left OTQ. And like all these, you just got all of this stuff. And I love it. Every time we get to hear one of these play calls, I just smile. And it's because I love the game. I love the game of football. I love the X's and O's, the schematics. I love watching players think. I know that sounds so crazy, but I love watching players process information, because there's no other sport that you're processing the amount of information from a detail standpoint as you are in football. Now, there's free-flowing creative ways that you're processing information in other sports like hockey and basketball and so on and so forth. But I'm talking about like processing real detailed information and specific information. There's no other sport like football because of those play calls. So to get to hear it, I think delivers a whole layer of nuance for the fan at home. And then obviously, if I can dissect some of the things out of the play call, and what I love about it is teaching things like this. I think most people believe that there are just football plays. Like, what play did they run? And I always kind of chuckle when I hear that. And the reason is, RJ, is because there are no plays. Like, that's not a thing. And you might be thinking, like, what are you talking about? Well, there are personnel groups and formations and movement and concepts. And you have to marry all of those together to get what you deem as a play. So people are like, well, why'd they run that play? Well, it's like, well, what play was that? And what formation was that? What personnel group was that? And so I love to hear the different type of language. Let me look back. I brought my book because I knew that we would do some of this. And
yes,
during the games, I'll just like scratch out, I'll do like, it's just chicken scratches and stuff like this. But I just write what I hear. And because you can't see me, I'm in the booth, right? So I'm just writing what I hear. And so I'll write like Razor Bunch Seattle even. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Razor Bunch. So Razor Bunch. And I immediately think to myself, like, Razor Bunch is a formation. So there's probably like a left Razor Bunch, Seattle even. And I'm like, okay, Seattle is the concept. So I'm immediately like breaking things up. So Razor Bunch, that's a formation. You're going to go that way. You're going to make it left or right. So Razor Bunch formation. Seattle, that's a concept. Okay, Seattle is telling people what it is. It's probably a run concept. And in fact, I know it is because it's Birmingham. And then you've got to direct the run. because Seattle is just how you're blocking it. But where are you blocking it? Well, even means to the right. Okay, so all of this stuff means things, and you would not know that if you just heard the play call as a layperson, you know, Razor Bunch Seattle even. You're like, well, what in God's name does that mean? Is that a play? Kind of, because you can be in Razor Bunch and run something other than Seattle, and it can be Seattle odd. It can be all sorts of different things. They've also got one that's like Rob's a formation, so it's left Rob, Atlanta, 48 Eagle. Atlanta's the protection, 48 Eagle is the pass concept. Right, so Rob is the formation, Atlanta is the protection. How are you diagnosing the protection? So yes, I love listening to the play call and trying to dissect all of that out. That's where I get most excited. The longer the play call, the more excited I get in the booth, because I'm like, that is awesome. So hearing it before, and then I think I get most satisfaction out of if I can diagnose it or translate it as fast as I can. Maybe draw, or just kind of try to give you a little bit of an idea of what you're about to see or what you just heard. That's when I really get excited. Brings me great satisfaction, because I feel like when people watch sports, the one thing that they're, maybe not one, but multiple things, I think something that they're looking for is to be, they want you in the booth to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be the expert, RJ, but you can't speak down to them. And so, like, you've got to be the smartest person in the room, but not feel like the smartest person in the room. So my favorite thing to do is to bring others, like, up to speed. This is what you're seeing and why. And because I want you at home to feel empowered. Well, in a normal broadcast, that's incredibly hard to do, because everything that I'm doing is based on anticipation. There's some guessing going on, but it's a feel. Whereas this, I can hear it. So I know, so I can bring you right to the water as a fan. So it brings me great satisfaction. And I think, and I hope that people at home have really enjoyed that as well.
Thanks for watching this video, and remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the #1 ranked show YouTube channel.